Building Blocks, where we program Minecraft mods live on camera, and we have some interesting things to do today. So, gonna start off with all the fun stuff that I've been doing over this past week. I say all, it's mostly been getting one thing to work, which required a bunch of effort, but I think it's getting to a good point. It's been kind of resting destitute for a very long while, so, you know, getting it done is kind of a good, nice thing, but we'll see. Why are we not responding? Oh, we're just taking an age to load up because I got the bow slow. Right, that's why. Okay, good to know I haven't just broken something immediately. Okay, so here we are in the various oddities test world. I've got some things and some stuffs in my inventories. Everything is a complete mess, as dev environments tend to be. This is also where I have been testing out scent and dark vision, so we can kind of see everything going on around us right there. And let me see now. What I've mostly been working on involves me teleporting 30 blocks into the sky and dying. But not admittedly quite like that, so I evidently have some injection that needs to be tweaked a little bit. Where was that happening? Is hand active? Apparently had a problem. Is hand active is not cancelable? Oh, right, yes, that's my fault. Where are you? This would be much easier if I actually organized these based on what they're responsible for, but here we are. It was the first time I actually noticing it. Uncancelable, it ends up being the thing that crashes. Oh well. Should be fine. Shouldn't cause us too much of a problem. That's one of the more recent pieces I added, so of course it's the part that's had the least testing. But okay. Technically speaking, I'm supposed to be working on the template screen, which I haven't touched pretty much at all, since everybody in chat told me instead to make legs. So... I mean, I guess what is it they say? Never skip leg day? Hmm? Right, I presume I'm dead. Oh, yep, I am indeed dead. There I am. And I can't interact with my corpse. I can't interact with basically anything. But, you know. Like, yep, no block placing. Still need to figure out the left clicking a little bit. But, there we go. So, that is a corpse. Specifically, it's my corpse. I also have an unconscious body. That's a little harder to show off and it's had a lot less development. But, if I repeat that same thing, then I fall, I die, I live again. I can't heal, but there I am, and if I go too far away, it tries to prevent me from going so that I have to stay close to my corpse. And after about 15 seconds, it actually kills me. And you'll notice that there was not a second death message there, though there was one. And then I respawn, I'm set to alive again, and my corpse goes away. Fairly straightforward. This is partially an enabling factor for necromancy down the line. We need corpses to happen so that you can resurrect them as being like the same person, or a zombie version, or a skeleton version, that kind of thing. We also can use them for decoration. If you want to have like a battlefield strewn with the bodies of the dead, then it kind of helps if you have access to the bodies of the dead. Bodies do have an inventory in them, so let me see. I should be able to set it to persistent, and then it will not go away. So data, merge, entity, that. There. I will still die. Pretty sure. Yep, but now it shouldn't go away. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Persistent bodies stick around even after you've died. Ostensibly, this is also getting my skin, but it's a little hard to test that in a dev environment when your skin is just default anyways. But here we are. Here's the dev. You can shift-click things into their inventory. They'll display whatever they're wearing. It's pretty nice, pretty nice. It's a little hard to see their overall because of just how Minecraft be, but yeah. So, there's a bunch of features listed in the Discord that I have not as yet managed to implement, but let me just bring up the list. There we are. Okay. So, they are planned, all bodies, especially player bodies specifically, but bodies, be they unconscious or dead, have to load the chunk that they're in, and adjacent ones if they're close to a chunk boundary. This will ensure that we never lose track of where they are, which is important for various things, like knowing where a player should be when they respawn or when they are resurrected, that kind of thing. I'm a little uncertain if I should have them be leashable, but you can nudge them around, as we just saw. Corpses then need to have the option of being resurrected, so if it's a player, then we respawn the player at the body, give them all the corpse's inventory, that kind of thing. If it's a mob, then we just get whatever the body is meant to be, respawn that. Players can move and look around in a spectator-like fashion within a short range of their corpse, so we've got the limited range part. You can only move within about 6 blocks of your corpse. It will always move you back if you're any further than that. Moving around we can do, looking around we can do. There's obviously still some discrepancies with spectators. I can still break blocks, for instance. I can't right-click anything, but I can still break blocks and such, still working on that. I also need you to not render. I also need you to, like, not be the target of mobs that are nearby, even though I don't think you can take damage currently. I don't think I've tested that, but, you know, it's a thing to bear in mind. When a monster kills you, and you drop a corpse, they should stop trying to kill you. Whether they then try to eat your corpse is another matter. But, yeah. Although, if your corpse no longer exists, your corpse is the thing that's responsible for keeping you within range. So, at that point, you can just go around freely until you die, as per normal. Players cannot respawn for n seconds if they have an active corpse. Yep, just check that. Unconscious bodies are basically the part where we try to separate the player controlling the body from the body. So we have the player in the world doing things, but the body itself is just sort of static. Sort of like precognition, I guess, or what is it? It's like precognition is seeing the future. But this is like the psychic ability of observing somewhere else, like as it is right now. I don't remember what the exact word for that is, but so with that, we'll be able to, for instance, have the player leave their body and go and possess another one. And possession is a really big important deal for a lot of environments, because it means that a admin, like Dungeon Master player, can possess mobs and have them serve as whatever function. They can play as whatever is necessary in the moment. That's pretty important and a big deal. But anyways, things that are missing from that currently is access to the creature's inventory, including the player's main inventory. I don't know how far I'll go with the player's inventory access, but I feel like you should at least be able to access the hotbar in the main inventory, and probably also the armor. You will probably not be able to access curios. Putting that out there. So if I have an object that allows you to, like, become an astral form and such, it probably will not be a curio, for the simple reason that I feel like under certain circumstances players should be able to walk up to your unconscious body and take it from you to bring you back or whatever. If there's like a cursed item, I don't know, that like ejects your soul from your body or such, then they should be able to retrieve it like that. If you are unconscious, then all damage, status effects, and such are passed from the unconscious body to you. Healing directed at the body can therefore revive the creature by altering their bludgeoning damage. That's the main way that we have for creating an unconscious body, is dealing bludgeoning damage to it, which is done predominantly through the unarmed strike ability, which can be toggled, so you're not just always doing that. Players kept near the body, no spectator effect depending on what caused the unconsciousness, effectively. So if you're in an astral form, it doesn't care. If you've just been beaten unconscious, then it does. That kind of thing. Players count as sleeping if their body is unconscious for skipping the night. Yep, that's already implemented. That's fun. So if you've been knocked out, then you count as being asleep. So if somebody is, like, massively AFK, and everybody on the server is being swarmed by phantoms, and you need everyone to sleep on the server, there's a lot of mods that prevent that need being necessary, but just in case, then you can just, like, beat them to the ground and then sleep. Everyone will be fine. Nearby items added to the player's inventory, as though you picked them up yourself, also in dev. But, yep, this is very fun, and there is a bunch of details to this. So if we look at the server here, we have a corpse spawn rule now inside of these server settings. So you can set it to be players only, in which case players alone will always drop bodies. You can set it to be needled only, which is any creature with the needled status effect that we add from our bone needle in Theris equipment spawns a body, but only then. Players and needles, both of those combined, always, which I do not recommend using, by the way, because depending on how efficient your mob farm is, that could lead to massive server data loads and cause tremendous lag. But on the off chance that that's, like, on the off chance that you have a circumstance where you do need all of the bodies to drop, maybe you're trying to set up a scene, for instance, so you just spawn things, let them die, just whilst that's gone, and then when you're done, you just turn that off again. But yeah, by general rule, I do not advise setting it to always create bodies. Just as an idea. And then the default is just never spawn a corpse. So, yeah. Handy things, handy things. And that is what I have been working on for the past week, is just all of this stuff to get it working. So you'll note here we do cancel the actual original death event, which is also, I believe, what the Totem of Undying does, for the most part. But we still send out the death message that would have happened if you had died. When you actually die, it's done by your player data just by setting your health to 0, which does not leave a death message. Fun fact, you just die. And that means that we don't accidentally get double death events, even though you are, strictly speaking, dying twice. Just, yeah. This is me, Oni. They are a fennec. They are a massive cuddle bug, and they're frequently quite grumpy that they haven't gotten enough hugs today. But, yeah. Anyways. Today, we are going back to various equipment. And our job today is to implement a feature which I confess is going to seem kind of pointless. It's going to seem a little bit absurd, even, to some, that we should even think about including this kind of feature, because why would anyone ever need it, that kind of thing. But previously, we implemented legs. These are now cosmetics that you can put onto your character to replace the 2 legs that your character is normally wandering around with, as part of further attempts to allow players to customize their characters cosmetically as much as they desire. And this had a bunch of things involved that were a little bit more fiddly than we maybe necessarily expected. But let's hop back in here and see what we had before I describe what we're going to be doing today, though I imagine from my description there, as well as the title of the stream, you can maybe guess a little bit, or maybe just, like, the announcement tweet. Admittedly, that'd be much easier, but still. First boot is always the slowest. But give it a moment and it'll be fine. Oh yes, an ongoing question I've had is, if a zombie kills you, should you then have the zombie template applied to your character until such time as you die again? Maybe. Like, there's a thought. Like, when a zombie kills a villager randomly, depending on your server settings, they turn into a zombie villager. Should there be zombie players? Does that imply that the zombie curse is transmissible? Should you have a chance of getting the zombie template if indeed you are killed by a zombie? I don't know. Let me know. What do you think? Anyways, okay. So here we are. We have 5 as yet mildly untextured cosmetics and peg legs, which I think are still on the wall over here. No. Okay. Well, here we are. We have satyr legs, which were the first ones we implemented. We have kobold legs, the second. We have dragon legs. We have Naga tail, and I think there's one more I'm forgetting. Oh yes, the Drider body. Never mind, I wasn't forgetting it, I wish I hadn't made it. Okay, so, you plonk these on, and it replaces our regular human legs, so that we can be a little bit more monster, a little bit more customizable, a little bit more unique. Obviously, that does completely replace your skin. That is unavoidable. There is no meaningful way by which I could completely contort your player skin to fit onto a very non-player model. So you can dye it at the very least. There's that. Let's see if we go to Dragon. It's very much like Kobold, but a bit bulkier, bit more buff. It's got a bit more of a power stance going on there with the spread legs. Here we have the Naga, which is a complete and total replacement. There is nothing resembling a leg here, but it's very, very responsive. It's also the first leg we have that does not use its base model, this, for when you're sitting on something. It actually just curls up like that. Still needs a proper texture. It's not finished, but I think it works for the most part. I might try and bend this a little bit more, but, you know, I've always done that. Then there's the one I wish I hadn't made, which is the spider buddy, because it turns out the spider's, like, central point here is exactly at the level of where your, like, human body ends. So making a spider centaur is actually easy. Doesn't give you the climbability, has the exact same animation for the most part, a little bit more, because of course players have a lot more diversity of how they can be posed. So let's just hop under here. Lump. You can see. There we go. So an interesting thing is, under most circumstances, this body part here is kept perfectly level with the ground. This rear part here, I don't know what it's called, is allowed a bit more freedom in how it animates. But yes, you can be a spoodler. Or a droodler? I don't know. If you so desire, it is dyeable. If it's undyed, it has the default texture of the large spiders in your game, so if you retexture those, that's what the default looks like. If it's dyed, then it has its own separate texture. So you will then look quite distinct from them. But yeah, there you go. Oh, I've just noticed there is a discrepancy here. Interesting. That's easy to fix, but yeah, odd. I wonder where that came from. Anyways, then we made something that was maybe the first bit of accessibility items, because we added peg legs. So we now have 4 different kinds of peg leg. We have wood, iron, gold, and netherite, if you want to be really flashy. These are not dyeable anymore, I'm afraid, so you'll just have the material. I've been debating if you can enchant them, and if you can enchant a peg leg, it should logically have an effect, because enchanting has a cost. So it should have some meaningful consequence if you dye a peg leg, or if you enchant a peg leg and then you've got the shininess of it as well. But what kind of enchantments do we put on peg legs, and how do we treat them in comparison to... If we use enchantments from boots, then what kind of... How do we have them, like, combine if you're wearing boots and peg legs? Like, should we allow for, like, triple the level of enchantment? It's a complex thing. So for the moment, they're not enchantable. They don't do anything like that. But as you can see, we have them in left and right versions. Those are dependent upon their NBT data, so that we can just replace one leg. Only human legs, unfortunately, I'm afraid. Having peg legs for every kind of mob leg that we could make would be hugely time-consuming. So it is just human legs for this. But this is where things get interesting, because we now have effectively an assistive device. This is a prosthetic. This isn't a full leg. So what we are going to be working on today is wheelchairs. Now, wheelchairs are a disturbingly contentious issue when it comes to fantasy environments and as such, for the simple reason that if you could have, like, dragon legs, or you could have satyr legs, or you could be a Naga or a Drider or such, why would anyone choose to be someone that can't walk? Why would anyone choose to be someone who is blind? Why would anyone choose to be disabled in basically any fashion? And the answer for that, as far as I'm concerned, is very simple. It's because people have disabilities. And we have more fun when, yes, our characters are fantastical, but also when they are, like, people. When they're people with ambitions and drives and flaws, and are, like, people that we know, including ourselves, we have a lot more fun in that case. So, allowing your characters to have disabilities makes the experience better for all involved. In the case of a wheelchair, it might seem a little extreme, because how is anyone in a wheelchair going to go venturing down into the caves, fighting monsters and like scaling rope and whatnot, and mining ores and getting back up the surface and living through combat and all sorts? And the answer to that is, there is a thing that I don't know if everyone has necessarily heard of, but it is wheelchair rugby, and every single contestant in that could kick my butt very easily. And they don't even have swords. Half the time they don't even have armor. So that is my response to that. That's why we're going to be making wheelchairs today. Now, wheelchairs are naturally going to have a few interesting behaviors that are distinct from most of our other cosmetics. So what we're going to try and do first and foremost is that we have custom legs. We don't want these custom legs to be mandatorily separate from our wheelchair, because if somebody wants to play a mermaid character, for instance, but they're playing most of the time on land, then they can use a wheelchair, and it's just like a nice little RP explanation thing of how they're moving around just fine on land. If somebody wants to play a kobold that can't walk, then they could also similarly use a wheelchair as well as the kobold legs. We don't want to say that you can be a monster, well, that you can have monster limbs, or you can be in a wheelchair. That's not quite good. Will there be unique larger wheelchairs for players with larger legs like centaurs and driders? We haven't implemented centaurs yet. Driders might be okay. I'm not gonna say that I can do this entirely with never having a model complaint, but we can do it for at least the majority. So, we've already got wheels, thankfully. We implemented wheels when we started working on wagons. Wagons still have a control issue, that's why I haven't been working on them as much lately. But yeah, we've got oak through to warped wood wheels, and I think it would be fitting if we allowed wheelchairs to be made of any kind of these woods. So, that's a note we want to make down there. In fact, I forget, I do in fact still have this. Have I gotten this? That's almost done. I'm just gonna blend. Okay. So, wheelchairs. Not interfere with legs. Okay, no leg interfere, I guess. There, no leg interference. We want them to have, wood variety. We want them, I feel like a minimum here is that they should give you a higher step up, because I feel like that's just like, if you're riding around in your wheelchair, and it's not impossible, to the best of my knowledge, for a wheelchair user to jump, but it might come across as a bit janky. So, step height plus. And let's see, what else? What are the other properties here? Dismount on mount. Or on equip, I guess. And unequip on mount is the next thing. So if that way we don't have to deal with how you are like strapped into a wheelchair whilst riding a horse effectively. I don't know how someone who is paraplegic rides a horse exactly. I believe most of it is in the arms, but that might not make sense for some other mounts that you encounter in the course of fantasy Minecraft and whatnot, but bleh, that is less my concern. So, does that seem like the full thing that we should be working with here? What do we think? The main way that we need, like, the first thing that we need to do in order to have this be compatible with legs is not replace a model, just add one. And then that means that we need to change the pose of the creature that is using the wheelchair, namely a player. So for that, we're going to want to do a little bit of mixing to see what we can do to make them try and sit effectively. More or less, we're going to try and make as many legs kinds as possible compatible by making them just use the sit animation. Hopefully that works. I think we can get away without having to change the size of the entity on that basis. But we'll just have to find out, I guess. I feel like a Drider that can't walk, by the by, because somebody mentioned that. A Drider has 8 distinct legs. A Drider that has to use a wheelchair is just, honestly, to me, that raises a lot of interesting and mildly terrifying questions. Anyways. So we've got our to-do list here for right now. So let's start by just implementing an item called a wheelchair. So bauble, and we're going to add item wheelchair, which we will extend from item cosmetic, which I think is not dyeable. Yeah, just bauble persistent, good. Hi Dusty, how are you doing? I see what you're doing. How are you doing? You are tired? Oh dear. Okay, well let me get this done and you can relax a little bit watching me probably break my legs. Okay, let's start with an oak wheelchair. Oh yes, a distinct property here that I am not going to fix is that because this is a cosmetic curio, wheelchairs will not take any damage, which means their durability is basically infinite. They will never break, and I'm okay with that, because I feel like if somebody decides to play a character with an assisted device, it would be unethical, at the very least, to take that assistive device from them, even if that assistive device has no actual meaningful gameplay consequence. If somebody wants to play a disabled character, that character should be disabled. It should not be a matter that they take too much damage and their wheelchair breaks and now they're just stuck, or they have to just suddenly not be disabled. It also shouldn't be a thing that if you die, you have to do a corpse run perfectly abled to get your assisted device back. That's why we're making this a cosmetic, because it means that it sticks with the player. There you are. These are all considerations that I have put hard thought into over the past week. Because if I'm gonna do actual assistive devices for players to RP disabled characters in any fashion, then I'm gonna do it dang right, as well as I can. That said, I do not currently have... I would say I don't have the plan for it. But more specifically, I don't have the slightest clue how I would begin to implement neurological disability. Like, having a peg leg, we can do. Having a wheelchair, we can do. Theoretically having, like, arms as well, prosthetic arms, we can do that, no problem. How do I implement ADHD? How do I implement poor memory? Or memory lapses, or blacking out, that kind of thing. Loss of time. How? Did I leash the corpses? Not yet. The corpses are as yet unleashed. Okay, quick bit of model. Not it'll really mean much here. Where'd you go? There you go. Right. That should give us an item. We hope. An item that we can put in our cosmetics slot, at the very least. So while that boots, I will. There we go. Should be able to hear now. Yeah, this is the outfit for today. I really need to straighten my bang. Now for 20 squats. Here's more or less what I just said. Can't believe I'm gonna give Steve Minecraft brain damage. Okay. That's actually a point that I'll address in a hot minute after I've done these. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh god, oh Christ. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Right. So the secondary possible argument against accessibility characters with disabilities and such, is what kind of person would deliberately create a character with X? And do I have to explain how ableist that is? Treating X as always being a negative, treating it as always some kind of downgrade, some kind of punishment kind of action. Something that one would not willfully expose another human being to. It's like people are a lot of different things. It's like, it's not... The only thing that makes it difficult to be disabled in human society is being in human society. That's it. Proper supports and accessibility, like this, not a problem. Other people are what make accessibility necessary. Anyways. So I already know that the 4chan bros utterly hate me for implementing pride flags in Minecraft. So if this whips them up into a frothing rage even more, okay. Yeah, I get what you mean, Aluka. Okay, 1 oak wheelchair. Cosmetic. Okay, so, no rendering just yet, but we have the item, so now we can start to have things happen. And let's start with the obvious thing, which is that we need to alter the model so that your character is sitting whenever they have a wheelchair on. But yes, Aluka, I know that's not the argument you were making. I know you were just making a joke. But that is a thing that happens a lot of the time when people consider adding disability into character creation and such. It's like, why would you ever do that? Why would you ever make a character who's not, like, perfectly able? The other thing I hear, like the third argument for the most part. Beyond, like, it's ridiculous, it's cruel, it's not a costume, I think is the third one I hear most often, is like, you shouldn't be playing a disabled character if you're not disabled, and it's like, okay, fine, what about all the disabled players? Also, should disabled players mandatorily have to play disabled characters? It's not like being trans or being a different ethnicity, it's just a feature of human life. Anybody can be disabled. Anyone can be disabled by the end of the week. It's just, yeah. Apologies if I feel like I'm going feral tonight. But this is a fairly meaty subject that crops up a lot when it comes to video games and such. So I'm just knocking it on its butt right now whilst we're doing this. We're doing this, it is decided I will be implementing wheelchairs tonight. No further. I do not care what arguments some douchebag on the internet comes up with. If they don't want to use the wheelchair, they don't have to use the wheelchair. Right. So, let's open Player Renderer real quick. So, when we render our model, there are things what happen. And namely, we have the player model orient itself to be sitting whenever we're on a mount. So, we need to have that happen. Now I need to remember where this happens. See, it's living, right? It's biped model. There is an is sitting part in here somewhere. Sneak, swim animation. Should be a sitting variable, especially inside of player model. And I know because I've seen it a half dozen times. Actually, we can probably just check the Naga model. Because that refers to it quite substantially to use the sitting rule. Okay. So that's part of entity model, and it is set in living renderer. Yep. In the render faction, right there. So we need to be checking. Basically, we need to be modifying these in order to determine if we are actually going to be sitting. Because we can't just change it at the top here because it gets set there. Obviously, we can't set it at the bottom either because it gets rendered here. So we probably need to be changing one of these functions. Why am I changing the player renderer mixing out of curiosity? Oh, that's literally when we're hiding the parts. Yeah, that's fine. But set model visibilities happens before this, so... Though we cannot see the legs, they are in the sitting position. Okay. So if you're a passenger and writing entity does not equal null and should rider sit, that means I don't think that we can actually change. I don't think we can change this, actually. For the simple reason that if we do... If we change it to, if we say is passenger has to return true if you're in a wheelchair, then we know that we then have to make sure that you have a riding entity, even though we don't have an entity. Also, why does it say should rider sit? Is there an entity that doesn't make you sit when you're riding it? I can't think of any. Is there a vanilla thing? I guess not, because this isn't Forge. But if anyone can think of a single entity that you can ride that doesn't put you in the sitting animation, let me know. Or the pose, I suppose I just said there isn't much animation involved. Okay, the secondary thing that we can do is that value is set inside of the inside of the entity model. So, if we go to entity model and into the render function, and we say that if you're rendering a player and that player has a wheelchair equipped, then override is sitting, say is sitting is true. That's about the best thing I can think of. I think for that we'll have to go into model parts. Little bit of a pain, not gonna lie. But oh well. The mix-in be deep tonight, that's fine. Let's see, which one am I looking for here? Bingo. How many pages of things are there? 4? Let me just see real quick if entity model comes up in here. I doubt it, but you never know. Nope. Okay. Mix into model. Helps if we can type. There we go. Okay, public void, render, bloody blah. God, there's a lot in here. So at the top, and we want to say, I don't think this needs to be cancelable, but I also thought that when I booted up the first time tonight, so who knows? Now there's not an entity passed in here, there is a problem. So, I'm trying to think, that then means that we might need to mix into the render function of players here and set an internal value that we can then reference here saying, well, giving us what entity we're currently trying to render, effectively. Is there another way? Actually, if we just have... no. I was gonna say, if we mix into the render, if we use an event subscriber there, then we could maybe set it, but I don't think we can. If only they had like a getter or something for this. A getter or a setter or something, but Let's see, if we presume that players are the only thing that's going to have this, it makes it a little bit easier because we can just put this into player data. Believe it or not, more or less the entire rest of the wheelchair is going to be the easy part. Having players sit in a wheelchair without there actually being a wheelchair entity, which would be much harder to implement, believe it or not, is actually going to be the hard part. Okay, I'll be back in about 10 minutes to cover this. So I will, I'll be back to see if we've got any more progress to talk about here in about 10. Go have yourselves a snack, take your meds, get some water, stretch your legs, that kind of thing. I'll see you then. Welcome back, folks. So I hope you had a nice little break there. In the meantime, I have an idea. This is probably going to be a little bit janky. This is a bit of a roundabout way to do it, but it is probably the way that's most likely to work. So, we are currently mixing into the model, but we have no idea what entity is actually being rendered when we are running this. So we have no idea if the entity in question has a wheelchair. So, first things first. If let's see, model equals a little bit of trickery here. If model is an instance of biped model, actually is it entity model that has the sitting in it? I think yes, entity model, instance of entity model. We'll go with that. That way, if we do a full body replacement, we can still have this work somehow. Okay. That gets us to the point where we can actually set the sitting value. right there, at the render, after the renderer has already determined if it should or not. So that means we can override it. Now, in order to know what creature is currently being rendered, we need to store that value and reference it from a place that we can use. So, inside of the client bus, we have current rendering entity, currently null. If we use the pre-render living event, we can take that and set that value, because we'll be able to see the entity right there. And then model mixin can reference the client bus to find out what the current rendering entity is. So, it probably is fine if that is a living entity. So living entity current equals bus client dot current rendering entity. Okay, straightforward. And that needs to not really care. What types there? Okay. So currently that's not set by anything. Let's fix that up. Let's be a render living event dot pre. Post happens after. Oh, and it's asking me to type it. Isn't that lovely? Don't care much. What is it? T has, like, conditions. There you are. Can I remember where to put this? Static there? No, what's your problem? Pre cannot be qualified parameterized type since it's static. Fine. Can I ask you to just do literally anything? There. Yeah, raw types, fine. Don't need to care about it. Okay, so current rendering entity equals event get entity. Okay. And let's say priority here is highest. So if anything else wants to happen, then it'll happen after that gets set, so we should always have the current rendering entity right there. Okay. Get our sys out here, just so we can test this real quick. Get the display name. Get string. And just in case, if that's null, we don't need to worry about this. Although I question what the heck we're rendering in that case. Please, we need to actually add that to our mixins on the client side. Just in case there's an easier way to do this, I have pinged the Forge Discord. Unfortunately, so far the Forge Discord hasn't realized that sitting isn't actually a pose in Minecraft. Lots of things are. You can force a pose onto a player, which we already do whenever they're burrowing and such. But we have standing, fall / flying, sleeping, swimming with a spin attack, crouching, or dying. No sitting, because sitting is a composite thing. You can be doing a lot of this and also sitting, weirdly. Not that anything allows you to, usually, but yeah. Oh yes, a reason why we're doing it this kind of way instead of actually creating a wheelchair entity, there is hard-coded, very deep down code that if you are mounted on a creature and it goes into the water, then you immediately dismount, which is not really the feeling that we want for a wheelchair, Because firstly, we want to maintain our thing of disability should be disability, it should stay as disability unless it is specifically acted upon in a way that the player that is disabled is okay with. Hence, players should always have the the authority whenever of whether their wheelchair should come off in some degree. But yeah, we don't want it to be a case of you're in a wheelchair, you go for a swim, or somebody dunks water on you from above or some such, and you're immediately out of your wheelchair. But that is unfortunately what happens on basically every single mount in the game. A tragic thing, but oh well, maybe I'll get around to changing that at some point in the future. For more probably unwise mixing. Okay. So, when we boot in, we should see our console here get completely flooded by every single biped on the screen, effectively. But if that's the case, then there's a problem already. Wow, okay, what happened? Pre-injection phase, critical error, null pointer exception. Oh boy. What happened? It happened in the model mixing. Why? Why you do this? Unexpected null pointer whilst transforming. Would you like to explain to me why? Java happened? Yeah. Also, hi Dave. Hi there. And all of this is completely unhelpful to explaining what exactly happened here. Did I miss a step in the model mixing class? No. Are these incorrect variables? 2 integers, yes, 4x4 floats. Nope, that's fine. It's a void function, so yes, that's correct. So what happened? Oh, I'm so sorry, Dave. I hope it's a quiet day, relatively speaking, at least. Let's take a look at player renderer mixing. I wonder if it's just that it tried to load it on the server side. Probably not, but you never know. Good to have that. Especially given how hard last week was due to the unfortunate events that imply that were of international corporate interest. Oh yeah! I mean, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's not like it was leaked across the entire internet within like 5 nanoseconds. Okay. Do we have a living renderer mixing of any kind? Any kind of like other mixing? We have first person renderer. Nothing else. Okay. We need to mix into model, or we can't. Or we can change literally nothing. Should be the right thing. Let me check the bot. Model.render, yes. Let's see. Matrix stack, vertex builder, 2 ints, 4 floats, void. That should be absolutely correct, but on the off chance, actually, does model does not have any prototypes involved. It is abstract though. There is that. It is abstract. Is that the problem? But entity model does take types right there, and it doesn't have its own like render function, so I don't think we can specifically go into it. Let's try booting it with this commented out real quick. See what happens. See if it still complains. Messing with the abstract and banging the code to behave as usual, more or less. Welcome to Programming Minecraft, where everything is an uphill stroke. Okay, didn't mind that. now? I probably should not be allowed access to mixin, honestly. It's far too much power for someone who understands it so little like me. Okay, so it has something to do with this function. Exactly what, I don't know, because it doesn't give me a useful error here. Which is interesting, because the bot that spits out the string that I need to have in here directly references the actual stuff used. It's pointing to the right one, right? Yes, good. Hey, Weaver. How you doing? What is the solution here? What if it's literally the entity model part? I don't think it'll let this work here, but let's find out. I actually don't need any of these variables, but, you know, kinda nice to have them. Okay, so it's not the role types of entity model, as near as I can tell. Model mixin, prepare injections, handler for the render to prepare? Yes, that looks correct there. What is the problem for this? Best I can tell from this is that it wasn't able to inject into the model because it wasn't able to see the function? I guess possibly because it's abstract? That's the only explanation I can think of. Okay, well, if we can try mixing into entity model and see what happens there. Entity model isn't abstract, at the very least. And it should have the same render function. Doesn't declare it, which makes mixin a little iffy, but let's find out. Apparently no trouble. Okay. Now we just have to hope it actually operates. So obviously this isn't entity models, we know that much. What we are looking for is knowledge by the model of what entity is being rendered, despite the fact that it receives no entity input. But we have to do it here because we can't do it in the renderer because we can't modify any of the functions that are used to calculate if the player should be rendered with their legs in the sitting position. But yeah. I want to drop by and tell you you're a very beautiful man. Oh, thank you. Not really a man, but thank you. Closer to non-binary. Also not sure if trying to be transphobic of any kind or not. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the console here, which would suggest indeed that we're not seeing that function happening. Ugh, okay. Okay, right. Well, much appreciated, Liborm. I do try to look good these days. Right, so having this being in the render function of the entity model. Immutable sachet of stardust. Yeah, I guess that works. Some kind of strange modern fae creature is more or less how I roll. But yes, pronouns he, they. Let's see. How do I fix this? It's not crashing now that it's an entity model, but it's also not running. So what's the lowest level that I can go to for rendering here? Probably... Let's see, that's ageable model. Ageable model might be it. I think if we go to there, that might be the point. It actually has the function, so it should get directly injected into. We can still cast it as an entity model at that point, that's fine. And it has all the same inputs, so fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Yeah, don't worry, Liborum. We get a lot of trolls in here. They are usually swiftly dealt with. Okay, we're gonna boot it properly. Went through the mix-ins. Work completed. Post-client work. Registries. Textures. Okay. Looks good. Looks good. But does the console get flooded by names of things? Indicating that the model knows what we're rendering. That is the question here. Yes! Aha! Okay, looking around, we can see what is currently being rendered. Nice. Or at least all of the ageables. But that's fine, because that is most models. And certainly the models we're most interested in. Okay, grand. Okay, so if living entity dot type, it's current render, isn't it? Yes, current render type equals entity type dot player, we know we're rendering a player. Players are more or less by default the only creatures that can have curios and like actually equipped, so that's why we're looking for that specifically. Okay. Was there something? Yeah, right. We had I'm trying to remember where I wrote this. Player renderer mix-in, I think. There we are. Wearing limbs of type. And has conflicting limbs. Okay. So that runs through all of your curios with the renders, and that should mean that we can find if anything is a wheelchair. Any of the visible things are a wheelchair. Okay. If stack is not empty, then we want to set the entity model to be sitting. Where is complete? There. And it's just complete as raw types, but it's fine. Raw types and unchecked, but again, it's fine. We don't need to worry about it at that stage. Okay. This will not work if you combine your curio into a costume. Which is a weird concept. But it should be a start, at the very least. So let's see. If we have a rendering wheelchair, we should hopefully be forced into the sitting pose, even though we're not actually currently writing anything. We probably also want to set current render to null at the end of this. Otherwise, there's theoretically non-living creatures that are using an ageable model that could get weirded out by this. Probably not, because it's still set in their renderer. But who knows? Okay. So, I have a wheelchair equipped. It should be set as visible. It's not... Okay. So what's going on here? Let's go check back here what we got. Stack rendering. If stack is instance of limb cosmetic, and can't render with that armor, that's part's fine for us. Then it should set to true. Okay, so what's going wrong? That basically just runs through all of the rendering curios. So if you set it to off, and it skips over them in the case of legs and whatnot. So what's going on with this? Can I shadow it? Not sure. Probably can shadow it, but it will have to be in its own thing. So let's rename this to just the obvious point that we know that this works. Extends model mixing, which we will now recreate. We're so close to getting this to work. Of course, the next question is, will it let me do literally anything inside of model? Oh, no, it needs to be an empty model, doesn't it? Shadow that, which will allow us to access it in the descendant classes. Even though the descendant classes are not of the original thing. Okay. Okay. And let's add some sys out here. Just to give us a better picture of what's going on. Once we got this working with isolated on their own... Whoop, we have a big problem there. Specified mix-in, model mix-in was not found. Did I change it to entity model mix-in? I'm guessing I did. Yes, I did. There. now that we're mixing into entity model again. Transforming seems to have gone well. Configs run should be going through registers. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Let's bring up the console. And this should be just spitting out a big list of all of our current curios as soon as it starts trying to render us. Okay, so oak wheelchair, luckstone. I think those are the only ones we have currently. Do I have a luckstone one? Oh, so I do. If I turn that off, we'll notice we only have wheelchair left. Turn that off, nothing. Okay, so why are we still rendering as though we're not sitting? That is the question. Is it because we're happening after the rotations are being set? That could be it. It could be that our render is happening after the after the pose is being set, therefore when we're setting it as sitting, it is now too late. Okay. The value for sitting in the model is set up here. There are then two other functions, set living animations and set rotation angles, that are fed in. Those also, nice little benefit, have an entity fed into them, which could save us a bit of trouble. So if we feed into one of those two, we should be able to override there and have the animation actually follow through on it. So let's just have a look. Biped model is the main thing we're interested in here. Is sitting. Where does that happen? It happens in set rotation angles, which does happen after set living animations. Okay, does ageable model happen to have set rotation angles or anything? It doesn't. Does entity model? Set rotation angles, set living animations. Okay, right there. Let's give that a shot, shall we? As long as we happen in one of those two functions, we will be after the point where the renderer sets it, but before the point where the render happens. Hopefully. But hey, progress! Good progress, actually. Just a matter of whether it will let me actually have a function in here, because it was crashing it before. There is a problem with this idea, which is that entity model is abstract, which means everything has to implement set living animations, which means nothing calls it. So do I just put this into biped model? I probably just put this into biped model. Because it's an abstract, literally everything that has it is overriding these functions. So consequently, if we actually declared it in the upper tier, it's being overridden at the lower tier. Okay. So, hang on. We need to override biped. Which can extend entity modes. But hey, we've dug down and we've dug down like a tick and figured out where we might be able to get this working. Set living animations. There you are. We're looking for that. Okay. Go back over here. Now this actually has an entity input, so that's a start. Biped model takes a living entity, so it should be okay for us to give it that. Don't know if it'll care about this, but let's find out. Nope. But we know that that's going to cover everything there anyways. Okay, so that would be inject method equals set living animations. Add some parameters in a hot second. Okay, and that should be all it needs. Okay. We've got a problem. What's the problem? There. Alright. That's this out. Tidy up our mix-ins here, so we don't need the ageable anymore. We do still need entity model, I believe it was. Yeah. And that wants to be biped. Yeah. Ageable, we no longer care about. So once again, we are booting it and hoping that we see a flood of messages in our console to indicate that that particular function is actually being run. On a bonus, if it is being run, we should be immediately in the sitting position. Should be, being the operative word, though. There aren't many biped models that override the biped model functions, so we should be okay. As long as it works at all. Fingers crossed. Hey, hey! Okay. My console is indeed being flooded, and there we are, sitting Steve. We have returned to hover Steve. Hooray. God, that's a weird thing to say. But yes, there we go. And if I take this off, we're back. If I hide it, we're back. There we go. Grand. Grand and good. Sitting Steve, what will we do? Yeah, hover Steve's has once again returned. Previously, I feel like Steve's gotten better at hovering because the last time he was seen hovering, we had to cut off both his legs. The strangeness of game development sometimes, but hey, hurrah. An equipped and visible wheelchair causes Steve to be the sitting pose. Perfect. Okay. Is there anything else in here that we can get rid of? I don't think so. Okay. That solves that major part. He got prosthetics, that's why he's in a wheelchair. He has a hover butt. Okay, let's get ourselves... return stack registry name, I think it is. item registry name. Half. Let's see, textures, model. I think. Let's have a look. Textures, models. Oval, and then there's everything right there. Why are you complaining? Missing record. There. Okay. Now we need to actually render a chair as well as the wheels, especially the wheels. But okay. Let's boot open Techni and make ourselves a quick wheelchair model. Doesn't need to extend from anything, hardly even needs to animate at all. Oh, does need to extend from anti-model, I guess. And this is just going to be the seat of the chair, so we don't need to worry about it at all. Only thing we need to render is the one piece, effectively. That's... That'll just be a completely empty renderer, but let's start actually trying to develop it. So, let's get ourselves a look at Steve, when Steve is in the wheelchair. Let's see, it's like 8 wide, 12 tall, 4 deep, I think. So there's Steve's torso, and when Steve is in sitting position, we also need to be concerned about where the legs are so that we don't clip through them too badly. We could theoretically break Steve's legs into 2 each. So instead of just being one thing like this, there's actual like a bend, but we'd only be able to do that for Steve's legs, not for Naga tails or anything. So I'm coming up with some very interesting sentences as a consequence of this development, aren't I? What can I say? It's entertaining. Okay, biped right leg. Let's get that. And that's 12 tall. And its rotation point is negative 1.9, 12, and 0. In fact, it's actually a little bit inset. You can see that right there. Which means, I guess, that Steve has hips. Weird concept, really. And then his left leg is similar, but it's a positive 1.9. Okay, so there's Steve's lower body. And when sitting, the legs are... Oh, this Techni takes inputs over here for rotation in degrees. These are written in radians, because Minecraft uses radians for most everything. So let me see real quick if I can translate that so I can input it in Techni. It's about -81. I'm guessing it's the same value for left leg, yep. Neat and tidy, ready for church. And let's see, then there's a Y angle which I need to calculate. Pi over 5. Or pi over 10, rather. It's about 18, I think. Whoop, other way. Okay, so that's how Steve's lower body is oriented when he's in his sitting pose. So we need to build the seat, at least, of a chair around this. Now, there is one thing. I have a couple of friends who use wheelchairs. They're mostly only people I know online. I haven't met many people in wheelchairs. But if there's one thing that I know that wheelchair users absolutely despise whenever they are depicted in any kind of media, rarely, it's when their wheelchairs are exclusively this kind of design. The reason being that this is the design that you generally tend to get in hospital. Nowhere else. This is the design that is used for when you have like recently had an accident, you're just being like strolled out of the hospital kind of thing. The design I'm more interested in is called an active wheelchair. This is more the kind of thing that you would actually see people in their day-to-day lives, being like normal, independent human beings, effectively. So we can see that the back of the chair is much shorter. There's a slight angle to the seat as well. There's a lot of straps for your legs. There's of course also a seat belt going around there for this particular implementation because of how we are leaving Steve's legs. We're probably not going to have this section here, but we can have most of this right here at the very least. Whether I have something like a third smaller wheel at the front so that it's kind of a tripod kind of thing, not 100% certain, but we can certainly build for that as an idea. But okay, let's get started. So first thing, what is this called? The backrest, I guess? So that wants to be at least 8 in order to be properly supporting Steve's back. Let's have it start about there, I think. That looks good enough to me, I think. Okay. Now the actual active chair standard is the seat comes upwards, as in so that your knees are slightly elevated. Obviously, since we're not fiddling with Steve's knees, it's gonna have to go down or just straight flat, and we'll just live with the fact that it's going to collide with it's going to what's the phrase here? Overlap with the cubes there, but oh well, it's fine. Let's adjust this a little more to like that. Let's bring it up a bit, actually. Yeah, as I say, if I'm gonna be doing this, then I'm gonna be doing it right. As best as I can, as someone who has, to the best of my knowledge, full use of their legs. no point building representation for people into your game if you're not going to make it representation of those people. Okay. Let's see, that was 7. Let's make that 12. That's where the bottom of the legs is. Okay. I think 3 depth is good for this. Okay, that is obviously way too far forward. And I think way too deep as well. Something a bit more like that, maybe? I'd also bring this down a bit further. So a bit more like that, perhaps? Do I want armrests on this thing? Don't think that's necessarily needed. I think that with a pair of wheels on the side. I don't even model them just right now. Wrong dimension. There we go. Probably won't have them actually be that big, but this will give us some idea. And I do want to tilt these as well. We're not actually going to be rendering wheels, we're going to be rendering the wheel items. That's why we have them as being identicals. Like, actually, like, meeting all of the wheels we have. Probably would help to have actual, like, placement here, I think. Like, an actual axle down here. On that basis. So this must be negative 5 and 16. It's a little uncomfortable for Steve right now, but that's fine. We'll be fixing it. And also because we're going to be rendering actual wheel items, we won't have the full cube here. So that's fine. But we could also just move them out a little bit more. Just to be on the safe side. Okay, so that puts our axles as going across there. How's this looking, everybody? What do we think? Looks like a very weird chair right now, but that's to be expected. Target 16 and 6 is where that wants to be. That should be about right there. Decrease that to a 14 just so it's not jutting out. So if we slightly misposition the wheels, then we won't have to worry too much about it. About 0.5 up. There we go, that's going directly across them. Very good, very good. And then how do I want to handle a potential... Well, firstly, how do I want to handle them actually connecting? Because right now they don't. I could just make the seat lower. Make it 4 blocks tall. That'd work. Or do I want to try this another way? Do I... In terms of realism, do we want to have the third wheel? Here's my question for chat. Do we want to have the third, so I guess stabilizing wheel? Or do we just want to let it be like this? Is this enough? For right now, I'm going to leave it there. I can remodel this later if need be. So let's just get everything in place. So let's see, our backrest is at 0 and 12, 0 and 12. Oh, that's our wheel that we don't need to care about too much. 0 and 12, and nothing is rotated, so should just need the one model renderer for this. I put it in as a my detail, but like to be appreciated because you never actually see it in media very much. True indeed, true indeed. Okay, well, let's get the basics in here first. Add box. Let's see, this one's to be -5F, 0F, and -6F, and size 10.8. And set the rotation point to 0F, 12F, and 0F. Pull that back. Well, that's the seat itself. That is -4.5, -5 and 2. Scaled 971. Backrest. And then there is the axle down there. Which is at -7, 3.5, 0.5, 14.1. I'll call the rear axle on the basis of we will probably be adding a different thing later. We don't need to rotate it in any fashion, we just need to have it in position. Okay. So that is our model. So now we need model wheelchair. And barring the fact that we have to actually get the texture, we should be able to just run this as is. So let me see. I think, is there a texture difference between noses? Probably not. Trying to think of an item I've already done that does what we need to do here. Answer is most of them. Let's go tails. Tails will do the trick. So we don't need to worry about that because we're not going to be. We don't need to go. We don't need to worry about that much because it's not really going to care much. We're not rendering a biped model here. We're also not coloring it like that. So RGB will just be 1F each. Okay. So that should render a completely untextured, but nonetheless present, wheelchair underneath Steve. Or at least the seat components of a wheelchair. So suppose the bright side of Steve having his legs splayed like this is we can quite happily put another wheel here. It will not be rendered as big as these wheels, these side wheels, but it'll be there. Let me see if I can bring up an image actually of a rugby wheelchair. Real quick while I'm here. Yeah, that's a little about do it, I think. So yeah, this is what a rugby wheelchair looks like. A lot of the time, at least from what I've been able to see, the players for this are not wearing almost any kind of protective gear, which, do you know, that's pretty impressive, I'm gonna say. Like, big ups to wheelchair rugby players, because you definitely have a few points over able-bodied rugby players in that regard, because able-bodied rugby players are just fighting each other. They're not fighting people in literal armored vehicles. Like metal vehicles traveling at speed. That's... oh, good on you. But it has this kind of like skirt around, and it has the two wheels down here, which I don't know if these are casters. I would have expected that they would be like something that they'd be more maneuverable than that, but I can tell you this, they're definitely maneuverable. They're very agile. Really do have to give credit to the whole wheelchair user community. They're a lot more like capable of moving than people maybe give them credit a lot of the time. Okay, good. Good start. We have our like chair. We are moving around. I like that the arms still move. That's that'll work quite nicely with this, I think. How do we look when that happens? We don't. Okay, so we probably do need to include sneaking consideration here. Okay. That means we do need to include some rotation. Okay. So, do I make this out of a biped model, then? Let's try to think. It's Set Living Animations, I think, that is responsible for this. The Naga legs are probably the obvious thing to check here. So set rotation angles. Nothing here about sneaking. Crouching, though, we got that going. So let's see if entity in dot is sneaking, then bleh, else bleh. And we only have the one part to worry about, so we're going to say seats dot rotation point z equals I believe it's positive goes to the negative. Yeah, positive goes backwards. So let's say 6f. There. Okay, that should make it at least a bit more reactive. Let's see what we got. And oh boy, I just blew right past my break, didn't I? Wow. That sure happened. Okay, I will be back in like 10 minutes or so. And we'll see how this goes. Very exciting. Right, folks, welcome back. So, a little bit of set rotation angles and mild rotation point adjustment, and our seat now properly moves back so that Steve's torso stays inside the chair. And the next thing we need to do is render some wheels. So we're going to start off with one. We're then going to move that into position around the axle, angle it appropriately for its side, and then we can get the other one going, and then we can actually animate them so that when Steve is moving forward, the wheels are moving accordingly. But first and foremost, we need to render one wheel before you can render all of them. I'm borrowing code from the entity renderer for wagons, which does exactly what we're looking to do. So hopefully this will not take too long. Hopefully. The seat will still be untextured, but hopefully we'll be able to at least get wheels rendered. But yay, so much progress tonight. I also had somebody on Discord ask if I would consider porting this code to also be like its own mod. Don't know yet. Okay, so we don't have a wheel rendering. And I evidently have missed a thing there, because that's... Yeah, that's not right. Works fine if you're on the ground, not so much if you're in the air. Okay. So, let me see to fix that. Trying to think. Pose. I need to use the pose, that's it. There. Crouching pose. That'll sort that out, right. Okay, so why are we not seeing a wheel? That is the next question. We definitely should have an item for this, because we have a reference specifically to the oak wagon wheel that we use. Is there anything I can think of that renders an item on top of you? Except for, of course, the bauble itself. The Scarab Golem does. Renders an item, right there. Oh, and we have light coming in. Yay. This renders an item, it just renders it around you, effectively. Okay, that's translation. Translative sneaking, rotative sneaking. I think those are all fine. All of this looks more or less like what we're already doing, but let's give it a shot. Yeah, if I figure this whole thing out, it would take me like a day, a lot less. I'm just budgeting for spoons. To rip out all the code for wheelchairs, stick them into their own mod, release that on Curse, and get a git running for it. And then people can do whatever they like with it. Just make that open source entirely. Because I can definitely understand people wanting to play with wheelchairs. Like, that's... yeah, I get that. But okay, this should hopefully render a oak wheel on our chest, but we can move it elsewhere fairly easily, fairly trivially. Might not be the right size, but you know, we'll work on that. And I'm still not seeing it, but we are actually sitting properly in our seat when we go down. That's good. So where's our wheel? That's the question. It might just be that the wheel is actually fetched as like a separate thing. So let me try replacing that with literally VE items dot. We want wheel. Right there. I just hard code that in right now. So in theory, I could have the item stack itself actually contain the wheels involved. It's like you craft a seat, and then you craft it with any pair of wheels, and it just creates a composite item. In which case, you could have mismatched wheels, if you so desired. Now I'm drawing a lot of inspiration for this from the Combat Wheelchair supplement for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I would say the controversial Combat Wheelchair supplement, but the controversy is mostly from idiots, so don't worry about it. And they have a whole ton of options for customization of your wheelchair, for making it look how you like. Okay, that's a start. We have an wheel. We are probably not going to be going quite that deep, but I can add a couple of things. Like, it'd be nice to be able to stick a banner on the back of your wheelchair, I think. That seems reasonable. But okay. We are now in a position, at the very least. So now we just need to make this be rotated the right way, make it the right scale, rotate it down to either end of the axle, and that will get us one of our wheels in place. And then repeat that, reverse the polarity of the x-axis, and it should be good. Okay, we'll put this at 1, make them a little bigger. Once we actually get them into position, we can figure out more exactly where they want to be. Okay, I think translate if sneaking will be necessary. We don't want to rotate, we just want to translate. I think. And then that's moving it up. We want to probably be moving it down, so let's say 0.2 or 0.3, 0.5, why not? Okay, this is now a little bit trial and error, so I apologize if this is a little bit on the dull side, but here we go. I will say it's a little bit inaccurate that Steve turns, like, with the way that Steve's arms wiggle when he's moving around. Steve is logically spinning one wheel and then the other, which means his movement is like that, as opposed to being that, which is more what he'd actually be doing, but there's only so much I can build in here without just completely overhauling by model, so... Oh, that wouldn't be too difficult. But we'll do that at a later point. Okay. Good, that is no longer rotating. It is going down. We can get the pose here. So let's see, pose, or a boolean will suffice. So let's see, living, get pose, equals pose dot correction. I haven't decided exactly what should happen if you go to sleep or are in the face down, like, flying pose. I think it should just stay where it is. I think that's fine. Like, the thing that we're taking as written is that there is a seatbelt effectively across Steve's waist here. We haven't modeled that. We could, but yeah, it's just like we're taking that as writ at the moment. So let's just actually have a quick look. I know the wheel is not where it should be right now. I just want to see how this. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think Steve being in full wheelchair pose when he's in that kind of situation is okay. Like, it's fine. It's not a huge problem, I don't think. But okay. So let's see. We're trying to get this effectively middle point here to being on either end of these, so at least want to be level. Which I think is... that's already at 0.5, which I presume means it starts up here. So let's increase that to 1. And how is it depth-wise? 0.2 definitely put it into Steve's chest a bit more, so I guess we want to be increasing that. Say 0.5. Just so it's in a more appropriate orientation. We'll start with the right. We'll say this is the right wheel for right now. So let me see, a wheelchair mod would need to have the mixin to make you sit. We need to have curio support, so you can actually put it into your cosmetics. We need to have the wheels, but that's trivial. We don't have a crafting recipe yet for the wheels, I will say. So there is that. Theoretically, that should be fairly straightforward. Okay. How is that positioning? Well, that's about where we would put a third wheel. I might just jot down those coordinates. That does seem to be about the right altitude, though. It is... bearing in mind we haven't rotated it on the roll axis yet. That's a start. So, okay, how is that depth-wise? I think that does need to go further. I also think I'm moving it forward instead of backwards, which is maybe not helping my case here. Actually, we can maybe derive the positioning here from this. So if 0.6... that might just be the value exactly, in fact. And say 1.6? Or just 1, for that matter? Yeah, because I believe these values are effectively where 1 block equals 16, so that should be 1 and then 0.6. Or whatever 0.6, whatever 6 is over 16. 0.375, apparently. Did I change that to 1.6, or is that just 1? It was just 1, I think. Pretty on target, actually. That's pretty good. Okay, so yeah, we can use the Techni model as an idea to give us an idea of where these things should specifically be. Nice. Okay, grand. Let's get the other wheel in. That then wants to be positive. I presume. Yeah, positive versus negative, but otherwise identical. And we also want to rotate these by 10 degrees. Negative on the second one, positive on the first. Which will give them that inward tilt, hopefully. That should give us both wheels. Let's see. Another thing I was thinking of is being able to place wheelchairs as a block, kind of like a skull. And if you right-click it, it teleports you to the position, destroys the block, and equips it. I don't think that's a necessarily vital feature, but it's an idea, something to keep in mind. I like the idea of being able to have wheelchairs actually in the environment, not just being worn by people. Okay, how are we for tilt? I feel like if anything, the tilt's not big enough there. But yeah. What do we think, everybody? We got ourselves a wheelchair. Oh yes, the wrong angle, that's why. Let's see, ZP, XP is already used, so it would be... YP is what turned it that, so I guess I just need to... push and pop a little more. Yeah, there we go. We got a wheelchair. Very basic wheelchair, but a wheelchair. Hurrah. Loving it. Looking good. Obviously I need to account for when you're sneaking there, but should be fairly straightforward. Because when we're sneaking, we just move the seat back 6 points. So if we just change that, so if we just like alter that by the same amount, then it should translate them just fine. I definitely need to spend a day just like making item textures. There's so many missing at the moment. Okay, how's that look? That is still wrong. Interesting. Still the wrong angle. Not surprised, actually. Mildly. Okay, so what is the angle I need to change? Is it X? I presume it's X. That's the only thing it could be. Okay, so translation is sneaking, then minus 0.375. Otherwise that. There. Oh, and we are applying a function twice here, right there. Because that's hence one of these is actually being is having that sneaking translation applied twice. I have given the chair parts proper texture coordinates, so that should be fairly easy to finish up. Okay, there we go. That's the angle we wanted. Perfect. Okay. That looks grand and good. So the last thing... Let's see. Wood variety, yes. No leg interference we got. The last thing I think we have time for today is to try and make these actually spin. Because right now they're just static and in place. But we can... Quite... Okay, yeah, we do need to fix up the verticality. Looks like it's fine on the Z-axis. We just need to not have that happen. There. That should fix that up. Because it does need to go any lower. But they are going down the same amount, so there's that. But hooray! Now, is there a mount event? Or do we actually have to make that ourselves, I wonder? Hey Cam, how you doing? Can anybody think of a bauble that increases step height? Real quick. Just something I can reference real fast. It shouldn't be a huge deal, but yeah, I don't remember if I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But I'm sure it exists. That's just a forge get step height event or something I can hook onto. Okay, is that... Wait! Okay, I need to decrease the vertical offset, not erase it. Understood. Okay, so then... Do I even get rid of this, actually? Do I just keep it as -1? And just get rid of the sneaking translation? Okay, fine. Wheels for ease, yeah. Early start tomorrow? Okay, good luck. I mean, the wheelchair, like, seat itself doesn't... or chassis, I guess? In here with the wheels. That's probably just code we picked up from the Scarab. What we started with. But let's find out. Just gonna make sure the wheels actually stay properly in place. Night Cam. Have a good one. Have a good sleep. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So now the wheels are actually staying attached to our axle. Beautiful, beautiful. So, in fact, theoretically what we could do is have the center of the axle be the rotation point for the entire seat, and then have the seat tilt to meet the body. Without actually changing the connection point, but that's fine for right now, at least. Okay, so now we need to determine a value for spin, effectively, from our thing up here to determine the rotation of these particular wheels. So let me see, what is... That's the thing that makes it actually rotate at that. We know rotating it by the Z-axis was causing them to be at different angles, so... ZP, rotation degrees, spin... And for the moment we just say that that's limb swing. Won't be perfect, but it will get them moving. limb swing as a constantly increasing value. I don't think it's goes up or down based on which way you're going, but we'll see. It also might be way too fast, but we'll see. Can we get Steve rolling? Okay, there we are. Looks like it's actually quite the opposite, actually. It's too slow. We need to increase this. But if I go backwards... Yeah, if I go backwards, they're still going forwards. But it's okay. So let's say... 45, I guess? That's probably too fast. I'm trying to think of just how many... I don't know what this distinction is, like how much of a limb swing equals to like one block, which should logically be about 45 degrees of our wheels. There we go. That feels a bit better. I feel like I should space them out a little bit more, but... Steve in a wheelchair. Yay. Looking good. So let me just set a value here. And let's just say 4. Hopefully that will still show the axle fluid, but let's find out. I was not quite happy with how they're clipping into the back seat. The backrest of the seat. Are there any model details that people can think of that I should change or add to these? What do we like to the actual model here? What do we think? I think it's okay. I think it's good, but I don't know. Okay, yes, they're still there, but they're no longer clipping into the backrest, and Steve still definitely has hands on them. Yay. Okay, so in terms of stabilizers, so you don't just like fall straight over or fall right back, I think it would make most sense for any kind of stabilizer to be in the back of it rather than the front, because if it's in the front, then it's going to be completely on the ground here. Oh, and we have a use case problem, which is that Steve's legs should not be in this position when they're in this pose. Is it a wheelchair? It is a wheelchair. Yeah. An oak one, to be exact, right now, but other types coming soon, I'm sure. And it is a cosmetic, so you can wear it. Whatever. But if I grab some, let's say satyr legs. It's a little wonky, but we have a satyr in a wheelchair. Nice. If I say a Naga on the other hand. Yeah, still a little wonky. I might want to change it up a bit. Lower the seat some. It's not perfect, but we did just code it tonight, so hey, there's that. Is there any, I guess, peg legs? Yeah, let's check a peg leg. Peg legs, totally fine, somewhat predictably. Yeah, there we go. We got ourselves a functioning wheelchair. Right. So, dismount when you equip it, and unequip when you get onto a mount. Let's see if we can get that going real quick. Which I think we can. Let's see. Bobble persistent, and a bobble. Curio item. Lucian and the ghosts. Hello. Welcome to this interesting evening. Let's see. Unequip. That's what I want. Cold when the item's got when the item stack is equipped to a slot. Okay. Okay. Living entity dot dismount. Is passenger, I guess, is the one I'm looking for here. Yeah. There. So when you equip it, it should automatically kick you off of whatever mount you're on. Hallucinate and the Ghosts, decent band name of a bit unoriginal. Hey, I tried. I'm chiefly a programmer more than anything else. But anyways, those of you guys just visiting, tonight we have been working to add technically an accessibility feature to Minecraft. Purely cosmetic. But nonetheless, I think there's a very large portion of the community that will very much appreciate this. Including in my own Discord, it would seem. So okay, here we are. Just wheel ourselves over here. So here we are in our wheelchair. I'm just going to de-equip this for the moment. So if I am on a pig, and I equip the wheelchair, I should be popped off it. And I am. Okay, good. Right, the next thing is when I get onto the pig, I should de-equip the wheelchair for reasons that seem quite obvious now. Let me mark that off on our notepad. So dismount, unequip. Good. Is there a tick in here? Like, is there a curio tick? There we are. Good.
A new challenger approaches.
Hello. Living entity dot is passenger. Then let's see. We want to de-equip this. How do I unequip? How do I tell this to immediately unequip? Is there a function that just does that? Equip from use? No. I don't see anything in particular. Okay, so it's gonna have to be a little bit more complicated, but that's fine. We've done some complex stuff already tonight. So let's see. Curio's helper. If we go back to our biped model mix-in, there you are. this section just if we're a player, on the sheer basis of I don't know. Let's see, living entity dot drop item that stack. Okay. Handler dot, let's see, there's a stacks handler. I think I can use that. Shrink slot type, unlock slot type, process slots. Gets an optional curio stacks handler associated with a given I slot type identifier, or optional empty if it doesn't exist. But we have an identifier. Okay. Optional I curio stack handler. I think it's that one. Nope, what is it? Curio stacks handler. Oh, curio stacks, not stack. Yeah. No, was that not it? I curio stacks. There. You happy with that? Thank you. Okay, stack handler dot set. No. Get dot. I'm guessing the index is the index in here, as opposed to the index of all of the slots. Yeah, best guess. Okay. So let's go with get stacks. Extract item from our slot index. We just want one, it's fine. Simulate, no, we want this to be true. We want this to happen. Extracts an item stacked from the given slot. The return value must be empty if nothing is extracted, otherwise its stack size must be less than or equal to an amount. I guess we'll just say stack dot size then. Stack dot count. And copy that just to be on the safe side. There. Okay. That should mean that if we are in a wheelchair and we hop onto the pig or a horse or whatever, that our wheelchair will auto unequip. Even if it's not currently rendering. By the by. I don't know if I can force a curio to render, but you know, there are some occasions where someone might want to. Someone might want to have a hidden wheelchair. Okay, so we're currently in a wheelchair. If we get on, we have a wheelchair here. Are we in a wheelchair currently? We are not. It is unequipped from our cosmetic slot. Perfect. And if I re-equip, there was a problem there, which was that we didn't dismount fast enough for the curio to not do that. Okay. How do we fix that up then? I mean, it does the purpose, it's just not doing it the way we'd like. Trying to think. We can just give it a random. That would do the trick. Just have a random delay. And I can also, for good measure, if living.isPassenger, return. There. So it won't render if you're in that situation anyways. So next, int say 20. Then blend. So obviously we need to texture the actual model, and I need to add actual handling so that we properly remember what wheels we should be rendering. But we have ourselves a wheelchair, everybody. A wheelchair that is always with you, that does not ever come off unless you decide to, more or less. Nice. Okay, so on you. There we go, there's my wheelchair, and if I re-equip, it did not immediately kick it off me. Nice. Okay, it does still roll the wheels forwards if I'm going backwards, but that's a problem I've been having even with the wagons themselves, so not a huge problem, I think. But yay! One wheelchair for Steve. Hooray! Disabled Minecrafters now have access to wheelchairs. Okay, what else is on my list here? Unequip on mount. Yes. Step height plus. I think that's literally just finding the right value. I'm not sure, because players don't have, like, an attribute for their step height, annoyingly. It's literally just a float value inside of your character. So, I'll have to deal with that. But this is really nice to see. I really like it. I think we did well this day. Yeah. Okay, that is all I have got time for today. I hope you've all enjoyed. My next stream will be on the Thursday with the Will of Madness crew, and then on Saturday with the Carousel with my patrons, and I'll be back for more stuff next Tuesday. Otherwise, any videos I make are over at youtube.com/rumorcomic, and everything I do is powered by you at patreon.com/lying. If you didn't see it on the way in, that includes the donation goal on these streams, which pays for my medication. Otherwise, hope you've all enjoyed, and I'll catch you all, as ever, next time. Whee! I know it doesn't make sense to be controlling it like this, but it's so good. I like that it works.